Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first in the Panda Paddle Pro Series. My name is Anthony Vela, and I am the race director for the Panda Paddle. Looking forward to our fifth year of the event, and very honored to have the privilege of speaking with Olympian Maggie Hogan today. I just want to give you a brief little history of Maggie. She is just an amazing athlete, coach, and person. Maggie lives up in Hood River, Oregon at the moment, and she represented the U.S. in kayaking in the Olympics in 2016. Maggie got her start doing ocean life-saving competitions, and that's where I was first introduced to Maggie. We had an opportunity to travel the world together, going to several different events representing the U.S. in life-saving, and she went on to become an Olympian. And now she is an amazing kayak coach. So we'll get a chance to speak with the one and only Maggie Hogan. Maggie, welcome to the Panda Paddle Pro Series.
Hi, Anthony. It's so good to see you. Thank you guys so much for having me. This is such a great foundation. And man, any chance I can get talking to you for an hour or so is a good, I'll take it. Wonderful to see you.
So for those that don't know you, maybe if you can tell us a little bit about yourself outside of paddling.
Yeah, well, I was an athlete my whole life, basically. I swam, and then of course we did a lot of surf life-saving world championships together, and that led me to kayaking. And I started kayaking pretty late in life, like at 26. So by the time Rio came around, I was very much so ready to retire. And I bounced around to a couple different, careers. I was in pharmaceuticals for a while. I was in cancer research. And now I've landed, since Rio, we started our own business by importing canoes, kayaks, surf skis, outriggers, rowing shells for Nello in the US. And that's kind of what consumes me now as a small business owner. And, it keeps the variety of the boats that we import kind of keep us on our toes and involved in different communities within the sports. So it's exciting.
Awesome. And maybe tell us a little more about how you got into kayaking. I know it was through the surf life-saving, but how did that transition from the surf life-saving go into flat water kayaking?
Well, to be totally honest, I could not keep a surf ski up to save my life. I think I missed an opportunity to go to the Goodwill Games once, and they did an iron competition, which for those that don't know, surf life-saving is like a swim board and a surf ski leg, and you run in between, the events. And I did well in the swim, I did well in the board, and I borrowed Craig Hummer's surf ski, and I flipped 8 times. It was so frustrating that I was just like, okay, I think I can do well with this, because no one was really focused too much on surf ski in the US. And I was going through the San Diego Lifeguard Academy, and one of the guys in my class was a coach with the San Diego canoe and kayak team. And he was like, basically the idea, which I wouldn't recommend now, was if you can ride a bicycle, like a unicycle, then a bicycle is like no problem. So I got into the Olympic sprint kayak to learn the balance for the spec surf ski, so I could, get in and out of the surf and actually do well at those races. And just took me on a big diversion in my life, because I was very lucky because I was in San Diego naturally. And then the national team was based in Chula Vista. So they started inviting me to camps. And that was just around 2004 or so. And it wasn't until like 2005 when they hired a coach full time that I was like, oh, I'll give this a tunk. And then the rest is history.
So 2005, 2006, you started, your flat water kayaking adventure, and 2016, that's 10 years. So tell us about just, that span, and did you make your first Olympic team? How did trials go, and what kept you motivated to continue training so hard? Flat water kayaking is different than surf ski and being in the ocean or any other type of kayaking. And so what kept you going and motivated through those years?
Well, I think I love the grind. I really love training, and as a swimmer, like I was a mile swimmer. And I kind of loved the hard work. I love the day-to-day going in and kind of testing yourself. And as I love surf training as well, but there's an element of surprise there, right? You could catch a wave or not catch a wave. But in the kayak, in the K1, there's no hiding. It's you against the world over 500 meters. It's not like if you're a swimmer, you can find a mile or you can find a 50 freestyle. You can find your event if you're a good swimmer. And in flat water kayaking, it's really, you have one or two options. You have 200 meters, which no longer exists, or 500. So I really enjoyed that challenge because for me, it was about getting from a distance, biologically a distance oriented person down to a sub 2-minute race. So that was the challenge of it, really kept me involved. And then initially I did pretty well in the sport. Like from the time I started my first race, I think I was a 2:07 in the 500. And in 3.5 years, I was actually a training partner in Beijing at a 1:53. So I knew there was something there. But in our sport, back in the 90s, you had to be the best in the United States. And then we lost, as a sport, we lost a lot of berths at the Olympics. So it's now you have to be one of the best in the world or one of the best in the region. And for us, that's the Pan American region. So I did. It was a very bitter loss in 2008 because I really had believed, I believed I did everything right. And I'd come such a far way in such a short time. And then 2012, I also missed by, like, we had the leading time going into the qualifier final. We were seated first. And in the final, we lost it in the last 50 meters to Cuba, and Argentina just nipped us on the line. And it was also another heartbreaker. And at that point, I'm in my 30s. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And, I had some problems finding a coach that really looked at me as an individual and not as just part of a team, and like tried to play out my strengths and work on my weaknesses. So I was actually ready to hang up the paddle in 2014. And I kind of looked myself in the mirror and I was like, I can't leave the sport like this. I'm always going to be chasing something because I didn't do what I set out to do. So I started asking Michelle Ire, who's also a surf lifesaver and surf ski athlete. And she was an Olympian for South Africa in 2008. And she was working for the US at the time. And she helped Bridget Hartley get to a bronze medal in the 500. She's an excellent coach. So I asked her to start looking over my program, and she'd known me from other sports as well, and said, "Well, you're doing the wrong things here, here, and here." And it was kind of in line with what I was thinking. Anyway, I convinced her somehow to write my program for me. And from 2014, I had the worst result of my career and ready to hang up the paddle. And after 9 months of that, changing my training program and really taking full responsibility for my results, I was back on top in the US. And then I went overseas and I got a bronze medal at the World Champs in the 1,000, which isn't Olympic discipline, but the 500 is. But it gave me the confidence that I could do it at the Pan Am qualifier. And so I decided to go for another year and give that a go. And luckily it was successful. And I knew that would be my last sprint race. So I retired there in Rio. That was my last race.
Wow, what a story. And just to, to clarify to some of our viewers. So in certain Olympic sports, there's an allotted number of participants, and those participants are selected through various qualification processes depending on each sport. So each international federation decides how those spots are allocated. And so for kayaking, like you mentioned, it's most sports, it's you go to the US trials, you win, you go to the Olympics. Right. But some of the other sports that have smaller allocations or different allocations for sports, you not only have to be the best in the US, but you also have to be a certain level within your region, within the Pan Am region, in your case. And so in that 2008 Pan Am event, they're the fastest US team, but then they have to beat Cuba and barely got nipped by, in the last 50 meters. I can't imagine that. But that's amazing to go and, just continue on, for another, because it's a long time. People don't realize how much goes in, how much you dedicate your life to another set of 4 years. And, it's obviously the training, but I think the travel is something people maybe don't understand, and how hard it is. Sometimes it sounds fun and glamorous. Oh, I went here and there, but it's really not that glamorous. Maybe, talk about the travel and some of the places you've gotten to experience through sport that have been memorable.
Oh man. Well, each sport. So I like to describe kayak and canoe as like cycling, right? So you have surf ski, it's like your mountain bike. Sprint is like your velodrome, so the velodromes of, the kayak venues of the world are all mostly in Eastern Europe. So you spend a lot of time in Hungary, a lot of time in Poland, in Czech Republic, which can be beautiful, near beautiful towns. Like the Czech Republic, you're less than an hour from Prague, which is one of my favorite places in the world. But you've got a job to do and you're not a tourist. So you're hanging out, and it's, a town, it's like, I think it's a paper mill town of 500 people, and you're just, if I had I worked for GE, their train wreck department, running like repair work for them remotely. So it didn't really matter where I was in the world. I got up, I did my morning workout, you try to eat as well and consistently as you can. You tap into work, you go to your second workout, and eventually there's a race, So it's a lot of time management and time zone management. But yeah, I've been really lucky. I mean, with surf ski, we've gone to Tahiti, which is just a total joy. And then you got to lock yourself in a hotel room and get on to work, and you're missing Tahiti, But in Hungary, it's like a national sport there. Hungary, kayaking and water polo are two of their biggest sports in the country. So when you go there, a lot of times, they know their top paddlers are like in their magazines and Inquirer type of stuff, so you go there and you feel like, okay, people know what's going on here, which is really cool. They're real big fans of the sport. So that was always a pleasure to go. And I'll never forget, I think it was a semifinal or a heat, and we're lining up in the K4 next to the Hungarians. And this was leading into, I think it was 2006, the women's team swept the world championships, 9 events, 9 golds. Oh. And yeah, I don't think it's ever happened before. They were incredible. And, they're naming the girls in the K4, and in the 200 meters, you're in the grandstands, and the crowd went so bonkers that you could feel the boat vibrate with the noise. And, communication in team boats is really important. So we're making calls. No one can hear anything. It was really, really cool.
Wow, that's awesome. I can imagine just, feeling your boat shake, and hopefully you guys got some of that energy as well. But
oh man, yeah. Well, here in the U.S., you can hear your parents screaming for you. So it's a little different. Over there.
That's another part, is people I don't know that you're going to all these international events, but being on the U.S. canoe and kayak team doesn't necessarily pay all your bills. So you're training hard, racing hard, but also having to get up and do your regular work remotely. So it's not easy. And through paddling, have you went to some cool places, but tell us about some of your experiences in nature with paddling.
Oh man. Oh, so ocean paddling, obviously ocean has a little bit more wildlife in it. And I've had the real opportunity to paddle a lot in South Africa, and it was actually after Rio, we went for a big charity event, and it was a multi-sport thing. So you had a paddle, there was a swim, mountain bike, running, all kinds of stuff happening for this charity race. And there were some great whites in the area, which is always a sign of a healthy ocean. And I'm a huge fan of healthy oceans. So, you're in their environment. So I'm out in the middle of this paddle, and like, there's some good athletes out there also that just came off the games. But I hadn't touched a paddle since, Rio. And so I'm out in the middle of the race, and this helicopter comes down, and like, originally it's off my like left shoulder. And the things that are going through my mind is like, oh, maybe I'm in the lead. Like, maybe they're taking photos. I should smile, hey guys. And then they like kind of zoom around me, and then they're off my right hand shoulder, like out in front. And then they dip like straight. I mean, it's almost like they could dangle their legs and touch, the water. And I was like, guys, it's like I was in a really tippy boat, and that downdraft will almost take the paddle out of your hands. Oh. So I'm like, all right, camera time's done. Let's go. Get out of here. You're messing with my race, guys. And after the race, like, I didn't end up winning. Bridget Hartley won. And anyway, the swim comes up, and the guy who's the race director gets on a little soapbox, and he's like, so we've got 6 mature great whites in the bay today. And he's like, but don't worry. Instead of, he's saying for the swim, instead of going from A to B, we're just going to do laps, right? Now, I'm not swimming, but I'm listening to this guy. And I'm like, and we've got 2 drones and a helicopter up, so you're fine. And he's given the safety talk, like, if you see a white flag go up, like, just calmly swim in. And so I'm chirping to the guy standing next to me. I'm like, what are drones and a helicopter gonna do? For the swim? And the guy says, well, the drones will spot the shark, and then the helicopter comes in and they dive right to the water surface, and the sharks don't like that downdraft from the helicopter. They don't like the vibration, so they dive. And I'm putting 2 and 2 together, saying I had this helicopter and it went around me, and then it dove to the water's edge. And I'm like, I think I was getting checked out by a shark.
And not just any shark. Ones in South Africa, I think, are quite large. It's not like
Fluffy and Smiles that do their juvenile pass by San Onofre every year, Yeah, so that was, I've seen them, luckily from a cliff where we do some trail running and looking down and seeing the sharks. And I mean, I've had the wonderful opportunities, like, you can't paddle up to whales, but if a whale chooses to come swim next to you, there's nothing you can really do about that, So I've seen some humpbacks out there, and flying fish, and a mola mola that what do they call the mola molas? Yeah, the sunfish. I thought for sure was a giant shark about to nibble my nose off, and it turned out to be this beautiful fish. So yeah, I mean, every chance you get out there, it's you're not the top of the totem pole, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Yeah.
So you mentioned, the sharks, obviously it's a sign of a healthy environment. And, kind of a last question before we get into some training and some, specifics on how to train for the 5K and 10K part of the Panda paddle, and also a little bit of technique. But what do you, are there steps that you take in your kind of daily life or when paddling to help maintain or improve our environment?
Yes, like this year, and I've broken it twice now, but it sounds silly, but I'm trying not to buy clothes this year. I have so many clothes. Like in America, we're so, right? Like we get all these sales and we have all these outlets around, and I tend to go nuts. And I'm like, you know what? I really don't need anything. So I'm doing a concerted effort to kind of limit the things that I have in my life. And if I'm going to purchase something, it's a really beautiful thing to make sure that it's environmentally friendly, and that, maybe it's going to last 10 years instead of 6 months. Mm-hmm. And that's one approach that I've been taking. And then, you know, to get involved, I mean, obviously with the WWF, you guys do wonderful things. And even if it's as simple as a beach cleanup, because sometimes you look at these problems that are worldwide and they're just overwhelming and you're like, I'm just one person, like, what can I do? And I feel like you know, the communities that are athletes and they're outdoor athletes, whether they're in the mountains or whether they're in the oceans or lakes or rivers, they tend to really, really care about the environments that we play in every day, you know, that support our businesses and support our lifestyles and support our health, right? Because we need to get outside and move. So, you know, getting more people involved with outdoor sports, I think creates a bigger awareness for the need that we have to clean up our rivers, lakes, oceans, you know, forests and everything. So, you know, that I think bringing that awareness to our coaching element, hey, if you pass a piece of plastic, pick it up, you know, in the boat. And usually we'll come home, and sometimes after like a big holiday weekend out, you know, at least in Newport when I was down there, you come in with like gallons of trash in your boat, you know, just it's just being aware and you know, personally trying to have a smaller imprint.
Yeah, those are great. And I think you basically said the whole reason for the Panda paddle is to, you know, get more people involved in outdoor sports, because if you get involved in outdoor sports, you know, it's hard to go past a piece of trash and not pick it up, right?
Right.
It's just, you know, it's just, you just do it. And you know, you don't have, it's not a whole like, oh, hey, look at me, I picked up trash. It's just something that, you know, you do, and it makes you feel better. And, you know, we're doing our little part. And that's, you know, basically one of the reasons for the Panda paddle is to get more people outdoors and moving, because inevitably that's going to lead to conservation and everyone making an effort. And so a reminder for all of you that are doing the Panda paddle, when you're out there doing the recreational 5K or 10K, or when you train for it, you know, feel free to pick up trash. And you know, it's always cool to, you know, take something out of our natural environment and, you know, put it in its proper place. So let's get to the training side. So if I'm just somebody off the couch and I want to set this goal to paddle the 5K or to paddle the 10K in a recreational kayak, or maybe I've got a new surf ski or something. So how do I go from off the couch to a 5K or 10K?
That's a great question. And you have to kind of define, you know, to get where you want to go. Let's say I want to drive to New York, right? It's a different question if you're starting from Los Angeles or you're starting from New Jersey, right? Mm-hmm. So it's always good to kind of like maybe even, yeah, like just have a baseline, know where you're starting from. So if you're off the couch, one, I think stability, like getting equipment that suits you, you know, is if you've never paddled before, maybe getting in something super stable, just renting something and getting out on the water, you're going to experience different muscles paddling as you would obviously like running or doing something else. It's a very unique sport, very mostly upper body, but we do use a little bit of lower body. And, you know, if you're off the couch, I would say get to your closest aquatic center, you know, go rent a couple, you know, you can challenge your balance and find something that's maybe a little bit more racy compared to like the rentals that normal folks rent every day, you know, but, yeah, the equipment. So making sure you're stable, because from a stable platform, you can apply more power to the kayak stroke. Or any stroke really, stand up, outrigger. So having a stable platform to start from will allow you to be more efficient. And as we get into longer races, like, you know, compared to a 200 meters, a 5K or a 10K, like efficiency is a big thing. We use a wing blade, which a lot of folks, you know, in a stand-up, obviously canoe, it's a flat blade. But racing kayaks use a wing blade, which is highly effective. It's about 20% more efficient than the flat blades. So just there's little things you can do with your equipment just to squeeze a bit more out. And then, you know, I'd say for a 5K, if you had a couple weeks to prepare, you want to go out 3 times a week and just, you know, start ticking away at 500,000 meters. Of course, be careful your safety anytime you're in the water. You know, you got to wear your life jacket, tell someone where you're going, have a buddy, have a, you know your wind directions. We see a lot of new folks get out and they'll go with the current, and then it takes them 3 times as long to get back because they're tired and they're going uphill. So like knowing if you have a current, or what, like in Oklahoma City, when I trained there, sometimes we'd have a 40-mile-an-hour wind, that if you didn't go into it when you started your paddle, now you got to go into it when you're tired, and it just, you know, doesn't make sense. So yeah, I would say, like, if you're off the couch 3 times a week, make sure you have a stable platform to paddle from. And if you can get a wing blade, that's a lot more efficient than a flat blade.
So 3 times a week, let's say I've got a month basically till the Panda paddle starts. I go out 3 times a week, start out 500 meters, 1,000 meters. And then how should I progress each week in order to build up to that 5K or 10K?
Yeah, it's, I would say if you're going to do that, then you'd probably want to, like each week do maybe a couple percentage points, bigger volume. You want to, maybe do some interval training. So like 250-meter repeats if you have a marked course, or if you have a GPS. And if you don't, like, you could go by time, right? So a 5K will take you anywhere, depending on what craft you're in and what shape you're in, from 20 minutes to, under an hour, just under an hour. So, you want to be able to work yourself up to being able to paddle maybe the race distance plus 50%. So I would say an hour and a half. And then if you can do that in a training environment, then on race day, an hour shouldn't be too bad, that you've got what it takes. So if either by time or by distance, just those nice incremental changes over the couple weeks, so you can make sure you're confident on race day and you're stable and you got the right equipment.
Awesome. And just to touch a little more on, the interval training aspect, and Maggie's saying do, some sort of repeats. So you would do something like, 250 meters or 2 or 3 or 4 minutes at a time, take a rest, and then do the same thing again and repeat that, doing a certain distance or time interval followed by some rest. And then, similar to doing a land workout where you do like 10 reps and then, you rest in between each one. So each set or whatnot. So that's the interval training is great advice. Building up is great advice. And then last thing before we get into some technique, what about just like, okay, I'm kayaking more and more, but is there anything that you did or that someone can do on land in order to help prepare them for the Panda paddle?
Definitely. So kayaking requires a lot of strength. And I came off Division I swimming background, and I remember my first pull-up test that I did with the kayak team, I could do 6, and I was like, okay, that's not bad, like it's more than 1. Like, okay, it's a start. But at that time, the girls on the team were doing 40,
Holy moly.
Yeah. And by my time, my PR over the next, 10 years of training specifically for pull-ups, I could do 65. So like, it is a big strength requirement, but it's to your body size. So if you're a 200-pound guy, you got to pull your 200 pounds across, the water. And if you're a 100-pound girl, you still got to pull your weight across the water. So the equalizer is strength. And so that's a big one, getting in the gym. So what we see, especially with our older paddlers, is women, we tend to lose strength as we age, and upper body strength is not as natural to us as it is to men. So I would say for women, like definitely get in the gym, push-ups, pull-ups, that kind of progression will really help. And what we see in our men, especially as we get older, the men tend to lose mobility. So what they have naturally in that upper body strength, now they might be losing a little mobility in the hips to get the correct leg drive and reach and that sort of thing. So those are very general. Obviously, you're gonna have individuals that are rock stars on both sides of the coin. So, like each individual has a different things that we all have to work on. But But yeah, strength and mobility are two big ones.
I didn't hear any of that except for 65 pull-ups. I can't get past that. That's the stat of the day. I mean, I did 65 pull-ups once over the course of 4 years. I would do like one day and one a couple of weeks later and one a couple of weeks later. 65 pull-ups. That is,
you get what you train for, and I haven't done pull-ups in a long time. I could probably do 4 right now.
And pull-ups are a great exercise. And, you know, for those that have never done pull-ups, there's these great bands that you can attach to the bar and then wrap around your knee. And they're of varying strengths. So anyone can still get the muscle benefits of a pull-up that's modified with these bands. And then you go to a less band and a less band. So a lot of people are intimidated with pull-ups, but it's such a great, upper body exercise. And there are adaptations to every single exercise, and these bands to do pull-ups, I use them when I would train because, to get more reps in and things like that. So never be afraid to modify the exercises to get the muscular benefits of the actual exercise, is a piece of advice that I would give.
That's a good advice. And like just getting all those little muscles, the scapular muscles, the little shoulder, like rotational muscles, all those little guys firing is going to help you be a healthier athlete in the long run as well. So yeah, like sometimes just doing a 30-second hang from a pull-up bar, it gives you grip strength, all kinds of stuff. So an appropriate start is definitely key. And this is a journey, it'll take years to get good at pull-ups, but if you start, you start. And if you don't, you'll never get good. So.
Okay. So let's get into some basics on the kayak stroke. We're going to ask do you want our technician to cue up our video, and maybe you can run us through just the basics of the stroke to start, and if you want to talk us through.
Sure. One thing that, folks don't realize, and this is an older video, I apologize, about our technique is that we are 60% upper body and 40% lower body. And just like an Olympic lift in the gym, the power from the leg is transferred to the upper body through the hip. So you're going to see a little bit, you kind of see right there, my shoulders going forward. You can kind of see the back rotating, right? And the hip is actually going back and forth in the seat. So what we see a lot is that leg drive, you can actually move your legs in a boat and not move your hips. But as soon as you get the hips involved, the whole structure of your power source is like connected to the water, if that makes sense. We're even with the wing blade, so that the catch on the wing blade and the flat blade is very similar. You want a nice vertical blade in the water. You want it nice and close to the boat and nice and square to the boat. The difference between us and like stand up or outrigger will go down directly, like down the hull, like the blade will be very close to the hull of the boat. Whereas us, if you can kind of see how kind of wide the paddle exits at around the hip. So we're a rotational sport by design of that blade. That blade is going to want to catch right next to the boat, and it goes out to the side, kind of like a triangle. So the body rotates to mimic what that paddle needs to be in its most effective point in the water. We call it the power phase. The power phase of the blade, like where it's most effective, is probably from when it's totally sunk up front in the catch till about the knee. And then you want to get it out of the water. You don't want to drag it back past your hip, because that'll create a little instability in the boat, especially as you progress to more like competitive, or not competitive, less stable boats. If you keep the blade in the water too long, it'll destabilize things. So the hip rotation, you can see here, like it's a little bit of a pickup. So as we apply power and stroke rate, it's all driven by the legs. So that leg drive and hip rotation is really important. And that's probably a lot of information.
I love it. If we can stop that in the catch phase, and so can you explain to maybe someone just starting, like, how do you grip the paddle? Should I grab it really tight, and just maybe go through what you're doing with your hands on the paddle sort of thing, and the catch phase?
Yeah, so you want your hands, if you wide enough apart where you're engaging your lats. You don't want your hands too narrow on the blade where you're really muscling it with your biceps, so to speak. And here in this shot, you can see like the back, the hip and the back are kind of facing us, right? That's that rotation that I'm talking about. The leg is set, ready to engage. As soon as this blade goes fully loaded in the water, what the arms are doing are really just guiding the angle of the blade through the water. The blade itself is being propelled, or the boat's being propelled past the blade by that leg and hip drive and that rotation of the torso there. So the hands, you can see, like, I'm not really punching that top hand. It has a nice bend in it. And the angle of that paddle right now is still slightly positive, but getting towards neutral, and I think neutral is like 90 degrees. Once it gets past neutral, you're wasting a little energy. So you want to exit and have a nice pause in the air. But yeah, so the break in the bicep on the bottom arm, you can have a little bit there, but really what you want to do is keep that arm relatively straight, so that your rotation is driving the boat forward rather than you're breaking that bicep or pushing that top hand forward, which kind of gets you out of your power phase immediately. So yeah, it's an actually with the wing blade, it's a very quick stroke. So it's kind of at my knee right now, and I'm already gonna get it out of the water. And that's, once it gets out of the water, that's kind of when I punch that top hand forward and reset my arms to get it on the other side. See the leg here is gonna compress even in the air work. Legs give you a lot of stability, especially as you get into unstable boats. So keeping pressure against your footboard really gives you control over the boat. And that's something that can be really important as well.
And that's important for beginners as well. And even the, basic, rental kayaks, or the basic ones that you can get, as an entry level kayak, that are the big, heavy, sturdy ones. They have those wells to put your feet in. And there's several of them along the kayak. And so to find a spot that's comfortable, and even as a beginner paddler, you can still use this leg drive that we see you using. And just to think about that and adding it into your kayaking can help you be more efficient, where you talked about efficiency, in the beginning. So, those footwells are there for a reason, even in these, it's not only for comfort, but it's also, even as a beginner, you can start applying, pushing with your feet. So when the blade is on my right side, am I pushing with my right or left foot?
It's the same. So that if in this picture right here, the right blade is going in the water and the right leg is going to push at the same time, that the timing of it is something that you can work on for a whole lifetime, But basically, we want to feel like the control of your boat is in the lower body. So as soon as that blade gets buried, you kind of engage that leg to kind of, as you would pick something off the ground correctly. They say lift with your legs, right? It's kind of the same thing. So you're loading that blade with water, with resistance, and you're lifting that weight with your leg drive.
And so what people see in this picture, her right knee is preparing to push against the footboard at the same time that the blade is catching the water. So that's what we see here. That's some great explanation. And if we can cue up the video, there's some footage from the back, which I think is, provides another opportunity for a little bit of explanation on the stroke. So if you can take us through, the exit maybe, or anything you'd like in this part.
Yeah, well, one thing, this is Austin Schwinn. He was a national team paddler back when I was training, and he's got great technique. You really see his leg drive. You see how the legs are moving up and down. It's not just the legs that are moving up and down, but his back and his hips are rotating at the same time. So this angle, you can really see that kind of movement, which is excellent. And as soon as Austin's getting the blade in, he's getting a good lock on the water, and that blade's getting to about his knee. He's exiting. So it takes a little while to get the blade out totally from the water. So it looks like it's a little past the knee, but that's what the athlete is kind of thinking. Like right when it gets about 2 inches past the knee, you're pulling that out of the water. And it's like you're picking it up out of the water. So the edge of the blade is coming out and slipping from the water, if that makes sense. You're drawing it out to the side almost. So it feels really effortless. If you drag the paddle back too far, it'll feel like there's resistance against the blade, which there is. There's actually a water sitting on that blade that you're moving up, which just doesn't propel you forward. So there's a couple things that you can do to feel these, like, good technique versus bad technique. A good technique exit should feel really light and snappy. If we're dragging the blade too long, which is a very common mistake with beginners, it'll feel like there's a lot of resistance at the end of the stroke, which is what we want to avoid with these wing blades.
What are some common mistakes that you're obviously coaching, some athletes that are, taking that next step in their kayaking or surf skiing? What are some common mistakes that you see, in basics that you try and correct?
Well, I'll tell you what, this is one of the harder techniques to grasp. It's not like, in swimming and in kayaking, paddleboarding, we create our contact with our field of play. We create it. It's like running. It's very natural. Your foot goes on the ground. You can't avoid it because of gravity. And that's your contact with your field of play. It happens whether you want to or not, right? So once you have that nice contact, so that catch is really important. It's probably the most important part of the stroke. It's like that first domino falling and hitting the next one. And if that first domino doesn't fall, the rest of the dominoes are just going to hang out, and not get the opportunity to fall. So we want to make sure the catch is really good. And then we talk about leaking energy, right? So if I have the paddle in my hand like this, and I don't know if you can see me here, and I push my top hand forward, what I've done is I've taken my paddle out of my power phase immediately. And the same thing on the bottom hand, if I break it by using my bicep, I've also created a leak of energy, right? So we talk about tightening up these energy leaks, and everybody has them. It's I think that's why it's so engaging. It's like there's always something to work on, whether you're an Olympic gold medalist or you're brand new. It doesn't matter. We all work on technique every day. So it's like, getting into this position where you're rotating from the hip and not leaking any of that energy. And like even world-class athletes in the beginning of the season, we can probably do it at a certain stroke rate. And throughout the season, our goal is to get efficient at different stroke rates that get closer and closer to race pace. So yeah, that's what I would say. Like, I would say number one common thing I see is this top end going right forward, because people think it's a push and a pull, where it's a lock and a rotate,
So you're locking the blade into the water or catching the water, like in the catch phase, and then you're rotating in order to apply power. I also heard you talk about, having your hands at a certain distance apart so that you can engage your lats. These are big muscles, in your back. And so if you're beginning kayaking and you're starting to put in more miles and you're getting sore in your lats, you're doing something right. If you're starting to get sore with your hands or maybe your forearms or something, then you need to go go back and watch the webinar again and try to engage more of your lats. And then of course, we also talked about using your feet and even just a little bit of leg drive, for a beginner. I think from hearing what you said can help them be more efficient on their stable platform, which is what you also talked about. These are great tips. I can't wait to go kayaking. So you need to send down one of those Nello kayaks, surf skis down in our area. And I think there is, when people registered, they had the opportunity to ask questions. So I think there's a few questions that John will bring up, but we did have one person ask a question in the Q&A down below. If anyone else has any questions, there's a Q&A box where you can ask something. And Kristen Thomas, who's watching, who participated in the San Clemente Ocean Festival today, you've participated in as well. She wants to know how you enjoy Hood River.
I love it up here. There's a lot I miss about Southern California, the surf, warm water, but there's no traffic up here. There's space, and we just did I don't know if it gets any better than that. It must have been blowing 30-ish. In Swell City was just perfect. I mean, it was so much fun, and the paddling community up here is so welcoming, and they're just really genuinely good people. And yeah, I mean, there's tons of things up here to try as well. We got foils and kites and things I haven't even seen before, so a lot of variety.
Were you on a surf ski today, or which craft were you on?
Yeah, so we just finished the Gorge Downwind Champs, and Nello just came out with a brand new OC2. So Michelle and I jumped in that and did the race. It was our third downwind ever in an OC2. But today I was on the surf ski. I'm a little bit more comfortable in bigger conditions, and I have 2 blades instead of the one still.
So just to give us an idea, when you're getting a really good, bump, how fast are you able to go on a surf ski?
Well, this particular river is a little slower than ocean conditions because, it's flowing out to Portland, but the wind, your downwind conditions are going east away from Portland. So we like to talk about average speeds in a downwind. And I would imagine elite women are going in the ocean. They're averaging about 16 kilometers an hour. We always work in kilometers because it's, international standards, I guess. But so that's cooking. And here it's about 13 Ks an hour. But I mean, if you took a bomb and ran down the face of a wave, and you're probably going to hit the one ahead of you, you'll hit 20 Ks an hour, which is really flying. And if you use that energy to kind of propel to the next run, you can really move quick.
Awesome. And how about in flat water, when you're doing a 153, 147, I think you got down to in the 500, how fast are you traveling in kilometers per hour?
Well, I wish I'd gotten down to 147. I probably would have gone to 3 Olympics if I had done that. When I started paddling, there were probably 6 women in the world that could do it. Now there's like 10 on the Hungarian team. So that's a really quick time. But you're going, I mean, geez, in your aerobic paddling, we were going like 430 pace per K. It's definitely faster than I can run a mile in. So, convert that to something tangible. Yeah. But I'd say over 15 to 20 Ks, we could go 430 pace. And then obviously for 500 meters, you're cruising, you're going, that's about, in Ks per hour. My brain doesn't work like that.
That's okay.
Because when I convert sprinting to downwind, I use different numbers.
Right.
So it's hard to, but that's like, I'm going to say 17 Ks an hour or so, but over short distance.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So Michelle wants to know, how many kayak races, I know it's probably tough to gauge, but did you compete in prior to the Olympics in 2016? If you could take a guess.
Yeah. Well, there's really not that many. You have trials in April for the US. And if you win the trials, you go to the World Cups. There's 3 of them in Europe, and we would go to 2. And then you'd come home and you'd go to World Championships in August. So that's like, you probably go to 1 or 2 tune-up races. But I'd say in the US, being a US athlete, maybe 5 races a year, which isn't much. And in Europe, athletes are doing, I don't know, 20 races a year. So
Wow.
it's a lot different. Now, I would go to the Southern California, Ocean Series, which weren't sprint races, but I try to get as much racing in as I could. But it might not have all been on a 500-meter course.
Right. So, Layla wants to know, like, what separate workouts or training can help with strength, endurance, and core for paddling. She recently joined a dragon boat team, so she wants all the info.
Oh, yeah.
But
all right.
if you can give a couple exercises, I think she wants to know about land exercises. We talked about pull-ups. What else do you do that helps with the balance, let's say?
Palloff press is a really good one. It's kind of an isometric hold. The pulley systems in the gym where you get the handle and you can kind of lower the thing or whatever, the pulley level.
Yeah, the pulley thing.
Yeah, the pulley thing. So it's a 90-degree angle and you kind of bring it out in front of you and just hold it, right? And so the wire is going that way. That's a really good exercise. I mean, the best exercise, honestly, because there's nothing we can do in the gym to exactly replicate the kayak stroke, is put resistance on your boat and go out for a paddle, because that'll give you some strength in a very specific way. If you do that, want to make sure you have good technique, because if you're enforcing bad habits, then, we don't want to do that under stress. I would do Olympic lifts when I was training, just to kind of reinforce the body hip connection and that speed that you generate through the hip. For kayaking specifically, that was really big for me. And then the sequence of like muscles that you use, like you have to lift with your leg before you use the hip, and then you're finishing with the arms. So that was really helpful to me to kind of reinforce that pattern. But pull-ups, I mean, if you could do one exercise and a progression to good pull-ups safely, of course, is your best bang for buck.
Awesome. And, maybe you've had injuries through your career, but what's like your advice on working through physical health, maybe even just mental health as well as an athlete, if there's imbalances in your system?
Yeah, well, balance, you named it. I mean, I think mental health, balance is huge. You're having friends that you can't live forever in the athletic world, whether you have school or a job or a wonderful family and friends to get you kind of into real life a little bit. It's good, very good, I think, for the brain. For me, it was. And then, of course, as we age, I think it's really important to take care of the small bits and pieces, like make sure you have scapular health, make sure you're doing your thoracic mobility, make sure the spine and the hips are healthy. As we age, we tend to pull ourselves out of whack, so there's things that the chiropractic centers can help with that are acute, but there are things that we can do to promote mobility and strength in the places that we've undertrained. So yeah, don't forget the little muscles for sure.
Attention to little details. That's great advice, both with the paddling and with your body as well. Well, Maggie, this has just been an awesome hour that's gone by way too fast. And there's just one more question that maybe John will help with, but Liza wants to know, where will the Panda paddling be in Los Angeles in August? Do I have to rent a board between the 12th and the 21st and go out on my own? She wants to know.
Yeah, great question. So Panda Paddle is virtual again this year, but one thing that I wanted to be sure to point out, is we are reaching out to different paddle shops across the country to try to make sure that you all have some great discounts available if you need to rent equipment. So if you go to the main Panda Paddle website, pandapaddle.org, and you scroll down, we have a map here that will show rental shops that are offering discounts. And if we click here in the Los Angeles area, you'll see that Pro Shop is offering $5 off your rental, and a great opportunity then to meet other paddlers who are out that same day in that time frame paddling with you. So that's one really great way to find other paddlers in the community, is just by checking out the shop here. And if you don't see a shop in your area that is represented here, we do have a little link up here to let us know, and we'll reach out to them, see if they want to offer a discount to Panda paddlers. So it certainly helps us out if you want to help spread the word. And I think that is just about it for today. I also want to let you know about a couple of the other events coming up in this series. So next week we will be, Anthony will be back with April Zilg. And then the week after that, we'll have Danny Ching. And then finally, Candace Appleby on August 6th. So we have a really great lineup of some really amazing professionals. A big thanks to Maggie and Anthony for coming today. It's been very inspiring. It's great to hear some wonderful tips, and we're excited to see everyone out on the water August 12th through 21st.
Thanks so much, Maggie. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the water.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everyone.
Bela. Thanks, John.
Thanks.